Now it's my pleasure to tell you about Frank Weisberg in the words of his dear friend and mentor, Julian Quizquater. Many critics attempt to describe a writer's work by drawing a parallel between two existing wordsmiths. So-and-so is the love child of blah, 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 and what's his name? Frank Weisberg is not a mix of any two. He is the illegitimate son of Charles Bukowski. Frank channels the notorious, womanizing booze hound's wit, charm, and deep understanding of the female psyche into the wild adventures of the protagonist we have all grown to know and love, James Todd. Todd's journey takes us through the bottomless depths of the tranny-infested Tenderloin all the way up to the halls of heaven, where he gets to drink with his fallen heroes. Frank uses these moments to highlight the trials of the common man dealing with extraordinary circumstances. He even tries to swindle Jesus in a book deal, but as you would imagine, it doesn't go so well. James Todd is the best and worst of Frank manifested on the page. The egotistical writer, desperate for success, who is brutally honest with his own insecurities. Frank concocts a wild circumstance, asks himself what he would do, and then takes poor James Todd along for the ride. That's what makes Frank's work so insightful. But best of all, it's piss your pants funny. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Frank Weisberg.
Thank you. Before I read, I wanted to thank Julian for writing my intro. And my parents who are here from New York. My girlfriend, Kaylee Sarita, who's also here. And I'd like to thank my thesis committee, Cooley Windsor, Tom Barbash, and Matthew Earbarn. I'm going to read a few pages from my story called Your God Has Nipples. And in this story, James Todd goes to visit his favorite writer at a retirement home. You ain't my grandson, kid, so who are you, he said as he smoked. I bum one from him. My name's James. I was reading the Times and saw that you moved into town. Charles perked up. They had an article about me moving here in the New York Times? No, I said. The Times Herald Record. Oh. Charles took a deep breath, almost a sigh. Well, he said, what do you want? Your God has nipples. I loved it. Charles slammed his hand down onto the table. Hot damn. This is what I've been waiting for. A good talk. Shit, kid. You want any wine? I made it myself. I looked around. You got any clean cups? Clean cups? Jesus, kid, you came to see me. You knew what you were getting into. What kind of question is that? He was right. I got up and got myself a dirty cup. It took some searching to find one that was still good to use. Most of them had dead moths stuck to the bottom of them. The rest had ash. But I found a nice one by the John and poured myself a drink. Let me guess. You want to be a writer, don't you? Yeah, that's right. And you came to talk to me about being a writer? I nodded. His wine was strong, but it had a good taste. They used to pay me for this. You got 45 minutes to ask me questions. Then I have to watch the news. I never miss the news. The world thinks it's passed me by, but I'm keeping my eye on it plenty. Society today. Women don't know how to dress, men don't know how to fight, and every other kid's an asthmatic. It's a weak world we're living in. Charles just kind of looked out of his window, into the distance. I could read his mind then. He was cursing the clouds. Anyway, he said, coming to his senses, you aren't going to try to read me any of the crap you've been writing, are you? No. Good. Hit me. I panicked and went with the obvious. What's your advice for young writers? Charles's face got all bunched up. He looked like he was in horrible pain. There are no young writers. That's a terrible question. How old are you? 18. 18? Kid, I'm 74. What can I learn from you? What could you possibly have to say? People want to read about 3 things: love, death, and money. You're 18. I've been fucking longer than you've been breathing. longer than even your father's been sucking wind, and I've fucked them all, everywhere, on everything. I've been married and divorced 3 times over. You got nothing to tell me I don't already know about women." He paused to smoke. "And every day babies are being born, and I'm reading the paper to see which one of my friends died. And I get excited every time one of them does. Do you know why? Because it means I can get out of the home. That's my social life now. Funerals. My old life is gone. What are you going to tell me about loss and dying I don't already know? Nothing. I'm in a home for Christ's sake. And shit, kid. I've been poor, and rich again. Spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on women and unappreciative children. What are you going to tell me about money? What are you going to tell me about anything?" He smoked. "Well, nothing, I guess." "That's right. Stick to nothing for a while. That's what you know. Wait 20 more years, then you pick up a pen. Until then, keep your mouth shut. Don't patronize people. First you live, then you write, then you die." "What's your advice for old writers, then?" "Die young," Charles said. And then he laughed. His laugh was more of a wheeze, like starting an old lawnmower. He wheezed himself into a fit, coughing and spitting everywhere before he gathered himself. Then he lit up another cigarette. I took a hit of my wine. "Your God has nipples. The title. What does it mean?" Charles smoked. "You ever seen Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel? I don't mean in person, but a picture? You know what it looks like, don't you?" "Sure, more or less." "Well, old Mikey painted God into there. He's the one with the beard reaching out to touch that naked guy next to him. Mike doesn't show them, but you can clearly see that underneath the blouse he's got on, God's got himself a pair of nipples. Do you know why we men have nipples?" I shook my head and hit my wine. "Men have nipples because everyone starts out as a girl in the womb. No one has a dick for weeks, maybe even months. So us guys, me, you, Tom, Dick, Harry, the whole gang, all started out with nipples and a pussy. But then our pussy grew into a dick. We kept the nipples, though. So you see, every man has nipples because he was at one time a female. And right up there in Mikey's painting, he's got a God with nipples, which means that the God sitting up there on that church's ceiling, revered and depended on by the world, once had a pussy. My God never had a pussy, kid. He's all cock." I laughed and bummed another cigarette. I was in my glory. Charles was who I wanted him to be. When you talk to regular people, you got nothing out of them. Nice day today. My favorite color was green. I'd love to see Europe. If you added it all up, I'd wasted weeks of my life talking about the weather. "You sure can talk," I said. "Talk, fuck, drink. I do it all, kid. Thank you." All right.